Hello, and welcome to yet another AI Advantage series. I am so excited to be here. My name is Coach K, and we have with me two marvelous ladies. Hopefully, you can see my screen all right. We have obviously the COO of Momentum, Ashley Wilson. Thank you for joining me again, Ashley. And our lovely esteemed guest is Amanda Whiteside, the Global VP of Revenue Enablement at Freshworks. I have to tell you, Amanda, doing research on you before this call, I'm like super impressed, and only because you're like the nicest person ever, and you just have this amazing resume of accomplishments and stuff. So like you're on the member board of trustees of Standing Together Against Domestic Abuse. You worked on as a chairperson of the board for diversity role models. You worked at Amazon, a ton of different places. Like you have a pedigree and a resume that's just super impressive. I just want to say, getting to know you a little bit as a individual and just you as a professional, just have nothing but respect and admiration. Just want to tell you thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So kind of you to say all of those things, Jonathan, and I'm super excited to be here today.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through the agenda, but before we do, I want to take you 2 minutes and talk about how like the AI thing we're talking about today, why AI and what you do particularly with Freshworks and how come we picked you.
Yeah, of course. So I have an interesting kind of situation right now in that I work for a company called Freshworks and we sell AI. So we see what it's like to sell it to customers generally in the B2B SaaS space. And so we are targeted with making sure that we sell it through our sellers and that they adopt and use it. But I also manage a team that is responsible for setting up and orchestrating our go-to-market tool stack. And so what we do is we also buy tools and we make sure that they are embedded into how our sellers use AI. And so I see it from both a buying and selling perspective. And so it's become a real interest area for me. And so I'm looking forward to sharing some of my insights and kind of what I've seen along that journey.
Yeah, Ashley and I literally have been talking about it since we first talked about, the strategy like a month ago. We've been talking about that conversation. It's been kind of mind blowing, which is good. So really quick about the AI Advantage, the whole purpose of this is to be able to showcase leaders who are leveraging AI real time and not just talk theory, but actually how do you execute this and how do you actually put this in a day-to-day thing, which is why, again, we've had some amazing guests and Amanda just fits right in with this whole theme. Just a real quick reminder, the next one coming up is with Brian Curry. He's the head of research at SBI Insights. I helped him with the latest CEO, I guess you could say the survey he did with about 400 or 500 CEOs around the whole concept of AI. He's going to be sharing his results with us live in March. So it'll be a fun time with Shanti and I be able to pick his brain a little bit, which would be fun. Before we get into it, I got to hand it off to Ashley. Give us a spiel on Momentum. We got to hear the goods.
Yeah, I love how we open with a little commercial.
That's right.
I'll give you the quick pitch to go along with that. For those of you not familiar about Momentum, I mean, why we're so interested in this topic, of course, is that we use an AI and automation to solve this kind of, I would say, age-old problem, at least in the last, 20 years of inputting data into Salesforce, leaders needing the information that's happening from their AE's calls or their CSM's calls, and it's just needing to rely on humans to do that work. And we feel like now with obviously, AI tooling and automation together, we really can replace a lot of what is happening manually, do it automatically, and bring back people's time, and also help everyone leverage all of the information that's being shared on these calls that just, gets discarded and left behind because we don't have time as we jump from call to call. You can jump to the next slide.
Yep.
So Momentum plugs into kind of your conversational data sources, whether that is a call recording tool, Zoom, Google Meet, or a conversational intelligence tool like Gong, or if you're using Clarion Copilot. We also read emails, support tickets. All of that feeds into Momentum. We're built on top of various large language models. We use OpenAI, we use Gemini, depending on the part of the product. And then from that, we output data into systems of record like Salesforce. A lot of our customers are asking us to push things to Snowflake now. We also use Slack as a way to disseminate the information that's happening in these calls really quickly. We all know that we don't need yet another tool to log into. And if your team isn't logging into Salesforce, we're not expecting them to then go log into Momentum. So that's where Slack really becomes a way to just get in front of a rep or a leader with really relevant information, a churn risk signal. Maybe you want to just make sure that somebody is making sure that they're filling in medpic fields. So all of that is how Momentum kind of helps reps and CSMs just replace manual work. And again, using AI. I think why we were so excited to talk to Amanda is that us, of course, as a vendor in the AI space, you get the question of, okay, how am I going to show value here? How am I going to make sure that adoption is there? So we were really excited that Amanda has both the experience internally managing kind of AI adoption at Freshworks, but externally on the buying side. So really excited to kind of dig into these topics with you today.
Yeah, we're going to dig in. Thank you, Ashley. And just a teaser for next week, we are launching our agent suite going out next week, which would be a lot of fun. So teaser. All right. Today, agenda. We have about 45 minutes-ish total. So we have 39 minutes from right now. Thankfully, Amanda was gracious enough to let us dive in a little bit more than just 30 minutes because I was like, well, I got to let your brain just soak in for a second with all the goodness she's going to give. So 4 main categories. We're going to go over AI ownership and accountability with both dedicated teams and strategies. And then how to understand, where do you keep AI tools, where do you cut AI tools, what's the criteria that Amanda uses across a large team to understand what's going on, and what's the ROI and business case. And then some sort of post-sales evaluation. I think this kind of leans more into how you're measuring AI success with your own tool, which is fascinating, but it's good notes to know about, either whether you're buying one or implementing one. I think it's good notes on both sides. And then lastly, obviously, any questions that the audience has, want to dive into those as well. So let's dig in. AI ownership and automation. Here's our first section, Amanda. I know you all can read this, but let's start with the first one. With Freshworks, I know you told us a story about it, but how did you decide of who owns the tool, who runs it? Like, what's your process like?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think everyone has been through the journey of AI where they bought a tool and AI is seen as an add-on that they can throw in the bag, and it looks to be a shiny, bright feature to try. We've definitely seen a high amount of interest and intrigue into utilizing AI, but the efforts that are required to really get it enabled through your organization is difficult, and it takes a lot of time to do so. And when you think about ownership, it's something that really is a challenge to sit with your internal tools team. So for context, I have a go-to-market tooling team, and they're responsible for establishing the North Star's tool stack for our sellers, building out that tool stack, and then making sure that we get a clear ROI on it. But really, once we put the tool in the hands of our sellers, we need them to start to adopt it and use it and show curiosity. But it's like anything. If you're not staying on top of it, if you're not being intentional about showing them new features, and as new features come out, it's a constant emphasis and learning journey for your teams to make sure that they're using it in a way that isn't also superficial. Everyone knows that you can get emails summarized these days. That's kind of table stakes now. There's so much more beneath AI that requires your teams to be really much more advanced in tool and technical capabilities than what exists. And so what we've kind of definitely struggled with, and where we continue to try and figure it out, is who owns that adoption beyond just kind of deploying it into the field and walking away from it. And what we've observed is that not only does it require some type of centralized team or AI council or group of individuals or peers that are passionate about it, but it is almost to the extent of a full-time job.
Yeah, what I thought was fascinating is how you talked about how your team owns the revenue number for your AI tool externally. Is that correct? Like, you guys track it, you measure it, like it's your baby.
Well,
So
we own the overall budget for our tool stack. And so when we get kind of scrutinized on, well, that's an interesting spend you've got for all those tools, they stack up. How are you making sure that it's really showing value internally for the sales organization? And so we have to build a framework or a set of metrics that show that the tool is being used in its most foundational sense. And then all of the extra bells and whistles, we're seeing true advantage with it. So for example, if it's a tool that helps with predicting pipeline or forecasting or helping to close deals or plan deals, we have to be able to demonstrate that that tool is in fact doing that. And AI as a component of that is facilitating it. And that's difficult if you've got a tool stack of somewhere between 75 to 80 different tools.
Right. So my question is then, I will get into this a little bit later, but could you give us a use case of or not use case, maybe a story of like how you decided that your team was one to own these things, and then how do you execute and measure all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was kind of a disruptive way to think about tooling, to be honest. Whenever I started Freshworks, every tool was owned specifically by a budget owner. And so if you look at the sales tool stack, it was really someone in some far distant team decided they wanted to bring on Gong. There was some team that wanted to bring on HighSpot. And so all of these tools, as it relates to kind of sales tools, were owned very disparately across the organization. And that meant that no one was thinking about how the tools came together. They generally speak to each other. And so how do we make sure that we are intentional about bringing the right tools? And then how are we making sure that we're scooping up that budget and looking holistically at what we spend in the company? And so I went to our chief operating officer, my boss, and said, listen, I think there's an opportunity for us to centralize all of this, bring a team together, a small team that can really look at where we're spending the money, how we efficiently spend it, and how do we make sure that we drive pure adoption and ROI. That created a little bit of friction within the organization because people love owning their own tools. They love having the decisions about what tools kind of come into the business. But once there was an understanding that we would be the centralized team that would help set the vision and deploy that tool stack, then people started to understand, oh, this is with a vision to get us a better set of tools for us to do our jobs more efficiently.
I'm going to keep getting you questions. Yeah, go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, as people come with new tool requests, does it kind of filter through your team and then you guys do the evaluation, you run the vendor process, and then you're just looping in kind of your stakeholders, or is it a different process?
Yeah, exactly that, Ashley. We and again, when people are used to being empowered to buying their own tools, it creates that initial friction where we had to get on side strategic procurement, finance to say, listen, no more tools are going to be improved unless they've gone through some type of intake form, some type of evaluation. And so we created a simple intake process. We then made sure that we ran that quarterly and we were looking at what was coming forward and where the gaps were in the business. Now we're a year and a half in and we know where the gaps are in our tool stack. So we were able to really look at 2025, for example, and say, what are the 5 or 6 most critical tools that we're either going to bring in, renew, replace? And what does that investment look like? So we can work more closely with our chief finance officer and make sure that we're sitting down and either asking for more budget really strategically, or we're actually able to make a cost saving because we've reduced 5-point solutions and now we can kind of condense it into a best in breed tool. So it allows us to really know the industry level kind of tooling landscape and be much more strategic about it as it relates to cost and simplifying the seller experience as well.
Since you're on both sides of the fence with both selling of an AI tool and then obviously adopting your team specifically, has that changed how you enable the team when it comes to adopting your own tool? Like what's changed as a result?
Yeah, it's fascinating seeing both sides. So the other hat that I wear in my role, we're responsible for kind of pure enablement and really making sure we train sellers and that extends from AEs, AMs, CSMs, SEs. So right through to kind of initial pitch and prospecting to closing the deal to making sure that customer success managers and SEs are driving adoption. And so what we were noticing as we were selling our AI tool, which is called Freddy AI, is our AEs were able to get it thrown into the bag with a deal. So we'd sign a contract, we'd say, hey, you should try AI. And that was really, really promising for us. We did really, really well in that. And now that our sellers are really strong at selling it, we now have to make sure that we're doing a lot more for our customer success managers to really walk customers through that adoption. What I'm noticing is that not all businesses have a team like I've just described, right? Like we're very lucky to have our own go-to-market tooling team that is really trying to become experts in AI and think about how to adopt and embed it. Whereas if you're talking to a customer that likes the idea of AI, but they kind of hope that you just plug it in. It's like a kettle, you plug it in and it just works and makes a cup of tea for you. It doesn't do that. And so I think one of the biggest bottlenecks for customers these days to really embed AI truly into their business is having localized AI teams or at least 1 or 2 experts or champions in their business that can really understand how to take that and deploy it and build it for their use cases. And so there's definitely an advantage if a business can afford to build a team like that. But if they can, it's very much on the burden, I guess, of someone like Freshworks to say, well, we have to find a way to make sure that our customer success managers can help customers as much as they possibly can in that facilitation. So really walking them through a framework to try and test new AI capabilities. And there's a lot of hand-holding in that is probably not sustainable long term, but it's something that we have to do until customers get more capability in-house.
Yeah, I'm going to pick on you, Ashley, for this, because I know we experience this right now. Like, what can you talk about from our side momentum, just from the CS side of adoption? I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we've really had to kind of, I thought we had a pretty good CS motion for our stage, but I think now that we're so deep in kind of AI native world, we've had to actually really invest a lot more in kind of CS and solution architects, and recognizing that the sale really starts once we close the deal,
Yeah.
obviously, like, but it's just like you have to you end up doing what used to be professional services as bolted on free these days. And it really comes from more technical, I would say, solutions consultants. And so that whole motion now is being built out, and we're saying, okay, eventually we'll probably need to monetize this, but at the stage we're at, where we're just trying to continue to grow adoption and have value and get those multi-year renewals, it's almost saying, like, just eat the costs to enable our teams to get our customers really, really sticky on the product. And it becomes not about the product. It's about the AI prompting. It's about going in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months in with the customer and collaborating and saying, did something change in your sales process? Do we need to go change the prompts? What about this? Oh, we have this new product. Do you want to try it? Oh, you want to try it? That's a whole nother like motion. So I just think we're seeing that. I know there's a lot of things on like LinkedIn and stuff about how, we're all about outcomes now and stuff. But I think in practice, we actually have to embody that, because you're the first to know, Amanda, you will cut a tool so quickly. Yeah. The bar is just much higher these days. And I think investing in CS means investing in technical resources to implement, plus a great CS motion to keep the customer engaged.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more, Ashley. We've gone through a phase where we've had to really kind of scratch our heads around what it means to be a customer success manager, because it traditionally wasn't everything you've described. And if we really want that kind of technical evaluation walkthrough with customers and taking each of their use cases and iterating and improving, it's highly technical. And it's almost like it doesn't exist today in terms of, kind of back to your point, Jonathan, around ownership. So as we continue to go down this path, I think we need to reevaluate, and perhaps there's new job roles that need to come out of it, particularly if they do become monetized.
Yeah, I'm hearing two different things. One was you had the authority for the actual tech stack in general and kind of led and guided that. And then there's the actual ownership of, like you said, the execution of a different role, which historically wasn't what you need now, which is fascinating. So let's dive into this. And I want to get into Alexander's comment here in a second. Let's go through these first real fast. When either your team or when you're selling your own team, what's the hurdles you see people have consistently, you overcome those?
I think with AI adoption, certainly what we see, if we look at Freddy AI, for example, the product that Freshworks sells, there's something like 14 very specific features within Freddy that can be utilized by the customer. But often we see customers really kind of over-index on those top 2 very obvious features, which might be things like auto-summarizing or, something that is very, very off the shelf. And in order for them to really have deep usage, we want them to use the full portfolio of features. And so that requires either setting up for very specific use cases that need some configuration or some type of deployment, or it requires just very deep enablement within their organization to understand how that is used effectively. And so I think one of the biggest concerns is, as with even as a buyer for AI, is if you're not getting that deep usage across the full AI capability, when it comes to any renewal for B2B SaaS, are you still going to pay for it like you paid for it the first time? If you can't prove that you're using it in a way that you really are seeing that value. And so this is why we want to get in front of our customers first and be able to say, listen, what do you want out of your AI? What are the metrics that are going to be successful in a year's time, so that when you do renew, it's a hell yes, we're definitely going to go ahead with that. And so there's different metrics, different KPIs for different businesses, but even just general usage is an important indicator to show is your organization adopting it? And then if they're adopting it, what are those features they're using and where are those gaps that we can help them plug?
You might find fascinating about legacy tech, and I won't name any names, but we come up against all this time all the time where the legacy tech will tell you, we know people are adopting it because they're inside of our platform as often as possible, but that's not real world, because if every platform requires that, and you have to get into 75 tools to show adoption. So with new AI tools, the thing that I love is that now AI is going to the users. So the adoption or usage is way different than it was before, because you have that capability, and actually I'm curious from your lens, because like one thing we talk about momentum is not needing a high adoption need from a user point, so I'd love to tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Oh,
First.
I was just thinking, like one of the values of, I think, using AI tools and having it be part of your product is that AI, the speed at which it can do the work means that you don't need to, if you don't have to wait, and you're getting back, in our case, you get back after a call, a bunch of fields pushed to Salesforce almost instantaneously. It becomes a lot more about adoption is within we need to make sure that the workflows are running, and it's like adoption of the workflows that are replacing the work that was done by people
Right.
versus a person adopting a tool that's going to help them that need to log in. Like I think the paradigm is shifting there with AI tools, just because the speed at which the work gets done by whatever AI tool you're working is just incomparable to what we can do. So we have to kind of think about what are the new metrics that we're going after. That's why I agree with you, Amanda. We similarly are starting to try to ask more questions, even in the POC stage, to understand what's the ROI we're tracking for the POC, but what's the ROI we're tracking in the first 3 months of adoption and then 1 year later. Because I think that it's not going to be enough to just go ask your CSM team or your reps or your product team, whoever's using the product, to say, are you using it? Do you like it? Because the whole goal of this is for them to like kind of not be using products. It's like the whole goal is just the assistance to be happening really behind the scenes. So it's going to be a lot more of like, how do we actually measure the ROI? And I think that's where you get into going back to what are the outcomes on the business that this is supposed to make an impact on, not necessarily on, is it helping your team? Is it helping you? Even though it is, but we have to think about the metrics differently too.
That's a perfect segue, Amanda. What do you think this next question is, like metrics? I'm curious from your internal perspective and then from externally, do you have like an agentic type workflow, both internally and externally? So like that adoption thing changes and the metrics then you measured changes, or tell me more about it. I'd love to see what you guys measure.
I think the unique thing that you're describing, Ashley, with momentum is that it discreetly works in the background. And so that need for adoption is kind of less bullish. When I think about some of the tools that we use internally at Freshworks for our sales organization, they need to open the tool. And so it's like the blunt instrument that we need to insist on. Are they opening the tool? Are they going into it? Check, yes.
Right.
And within that, are they utilizing the features? Check, yes. But really, we should be in a world where that's not even a consideration. The tools are good enough. They're desired to go into them. And so that's secondary to how we look at true kind of return on investment for what they're doing. So is it becoming an efficiency multiplier? Is there a task that they're doing that they can do 10 times faster? And if we look at a rep and their time spent, if they're auto summarizing emails, for example, the most kind of superficial benefit of AI, then if it's taking them 20 minutes to summarize an email, how much time, XXY salary of however, what size your sales force is, what kind of arbitrary saving can you make operationally? But you want to make sure that you can at least tie also things to revenue outcomes so that you can really get a good indication of, on a greater scale, how are you driving efficiencies that are fundamentally pushing forward your business in some way? That may be things like, are you helping your deal velocity? Are you closing deals faster because you've removed a lot of the operational drag that exists in the organization because you found 20, 50 different small tasks to speed up the seller so that they can sell to more customers and that they can close their deals in a quicker, better way, ideally with a better customer experience as well.
And Alex, if you're listening, I'm going to get you a question, I promise, but I'm going to go with the flow. So Jim asked the question, wouldn't the fundamental business outcomes, value drivers, and metrics stay the same as AI as an accelerant? So I'm curious for you, Amanda, I would agree with him. However, there's got to be that middle leading indicator. Like, what are you using in between to say, is AI helping? Is the AI a reason why this is working?
Yeah.
How do you track
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, if you're looking at, if we're saying that the fundamental business outcomes never change, right? It's average deal size, it's number of deals, it's, overall revenue attainment, those shouldn't
Right.
change. The question is the time spent, and this is where like one of the most impactful kind of ROIs that you can drive, I think, is your efficiency multiplier. So really thinking, well, if in a perfect world, a rep can do at an enterprise level, maybe somewhere like 5 to 10 deals annually. Well, if you take out all of that time spent, can they be doing more like 20 deals? And really, that's where I think if you can find a way to measure that in your organization, and again, this is where ownership becomes really tricky, because that's essentially an A/B test. You need a team that's going to sit in house and they're going to say, in a before life when things were really complex, how long did it take for a seller to work? And then in this new environment where we've tweaked and improved and iterated and given them all of these additional tools and capabilities, are they doing more with less? And that's something that is really, really difficult to get to, but it's something that we're aspiring to do. It's something that we want to be able to say, because that bolsters our ability to buy more tools and invest more in AI.
Yeah. Before we move forward to this, I want to make sure we get back to Alexander's question, which was, what are the top 3 mistakes made in AI implementation deployment journey, and how did you overcome those?
Ownership is a huge one. I always say it, when everyone owns AI, nobody owns it. And you'll see it be the case where, if you don't have someone that's waking up every day thinking about how to drive it, how to track it, A/B test, whatever it is, looking at the new features, it will absolutely fall apart. I would say the second thing is trying to tie it to very specific problematic metrics. So even if you're looking at we create customer support software. So if you're trying to improve your response rate to customers, if you're trying to improve your CSAT, how are you looking at the current baseline numbers today? And then how are you saying, well, if AI is really going to work, we want to improve our CSAT from 4.5 to 4.7. And then making sure that you're driving and implementing things to do so. This is where AI implementation becomes really a project in itself. And Ashley, kind of what you said earlier, like really making sure that you've got someone sitting down with those use cases, mapping them out, giving them 6 weeks to deploy and track, and then knowing at the end of it that it worked or it didn't work. And often you see companies kind of maybe throw in the towel a bit early and say, this is hard, it's complex, it requires internal resources, we're not going to go after it, when it takes a lot more time than I think we even all realize at this point. So I think the third thing is really making sure that you spend the time, once you've got all the project dynamics right, making sure that you're investing in it long enough to see the right outcomes.
Love it. This is a perfect transition. Okay, let's keep going. So post-sales valuation, I know the order went a little bumpus. We'll go here first. This particular question, I know we kind of talked about this just a second ago, but has this changed how the actual motion, the cadence, the process goes from a post-sales perspective?
I think it's evolving. It's kind of to my point earlier, Jonathan, around customer success managers today have a really tough job. They are intended to be more of a strategic support for the customer, and there is an internal debate always about whether they should own a revenue outcome or whether they should just be responsible for kind of overall customer success, however you define that. And that can be a responsibility of just making sure that they don't churn, which is not a fun metric to own. Make sure your customer doesn't leave. Right. But if we then throw on top of that, well, we want you to look out for upsell and add-on. We want you to make sure that you keep the customer happy, which means solving all of their problems, even if they should probably sit truly in customer support. And then if we add on top of it, hey, now we need you to do AI adoption. There's not enough bandwidth for a customer success leader to be able to be successful in their role today, particularly if you're looking for a proof of value that may take 60, 90 days to even prove one use case for AI. If they're doing that even if they're doing it for 5 customers, that is a huge amount of their time, particularly if they're not getting support from a solution architect or professional services. And, like Ashley said earlier, that's like, it's really true investment for a company to do that. So I think there's an evolution here of who owns this post-sale responsibility for AI? If a customer's not going to pay for it and it's not going to sit in pro serve, where does it sit? Is it like an in-between role between customer success and pro serve, and should it be monetized or not?
And how have you decided? Can I ask what you guys are doing now?
We're looking at investing more in customer success engineers, which is kind of a one step up from a customer success manager. And it's acknowledging that, we have maybe 300, 400 customer success managers today. We don't want to have to go to them and say, hey, listen, your job's just completely transformed and now you all have to be technical. That's not right. What we want to try and do, and they may go on that journey, but if there is a very unique use case where we have a customer success engineer, and we had few of them for the last couple of years, if we double down on that job family and we start to create these kind of isolated, almost like overlay teams that can go in for certainly the more strategic customers and really think about driving those proof of concepts, how does that start to scale? Now, we haven't decided if we should monetize it yet. Our intention is just to get customers really using AI to the best of their ability. But long term, it's another job family it's another role, it's another sales role, and it starts to create a very bloated go-to-market organization if you have so many of these, types of positions.
Yeah, that I think is fascinating. Just all the impacts that can have on sheer size and scalability, which is crazy. Let's go to this one real quick, if that's okay. Kurt, I'll get to your question 1 second, my friend. Examples of how your team has shifted from more reactive type stuff to more proactive account management.
A lot of what we are trying to do is, and we've come from a world where I think it's very typical for many organizations, where our customer success organization got very burdened by a lot of customer support responsibilities and really were problem solving everything for our customers. Now what we're trying to do is automate a lot more of the customer support capability. So we sell our own customer support software. We want to be able to drink our own champagne and use that in-house, and then really embed the AI capability so that customer support problems can really go to customer support and away from customer success. And we can be much more quick and faster at solving some of their very tactical issues. That then frees our customer success teams to be much more intentional about their time. Now, I don't see a world at the moment where we want our customer success managers to be, completely and fully automated. We want to give them a very tailored and personalized experience, and really making sure that certainly for our biggest customers, we're being very attentive to their needs and really driving a lot of that strategic value. So for us, the best way we can do that is balance the labor of those two job families and automate where we can, and then drive more kind of hands-on tailored approach where it's possible at the customer success side.
Ashley, because our team obviously automates everything like crazy, we still are hiring customer success people. So tell me, what's our thinking behind it?
Well, I think that you can't replace, well, in our case, I'll talk from two perspectives, what I see customers doing and what we internally are seeing. So internally, like you guys are thinking about it, it's really bringing on customer success engineers. We call them solutions consultants. So, for one CSM, we have 3 solutions consultants. So it's because we find that we can kind of triage the needs against the maybe SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. And you have the CSM really focused on kind of continual relationship building and checking in and kind of taking the intakes. But the day-to-day problem solving is of technical nature and is of more consultative, come in, hey, we have this product that we could solve this problem for. Should we implement it together? That's very different than a traditional CSM motion and very different from a support motion. So I think similarly, we're thinking about there's kind of these 3 swim lanes of like support, which is probably a combination of AI assisted support and just knocking out Zendesk tickets or phone call support. There's CSM relationship building and kind of making sure that the account is healthy and managing the renewal. And then there is this rotating group of technical specialists who are equivalent in our eyes to a sales engineer on the pre-sale side and really helping drive the POC. On the post-sale side, they're driving to that renewal and hopefully expansion motion. I think for what we see with our customers is one of the best ways that AI is helping on post-sale side, especially for our larger accounts, is automatic writing automatic cases. So capture a support case, automatically write it with AI, put it in Salesforce as a case. Like that time savings is huge, especially when you think about multi-language calls and this transfers in some cases to support and CS. I think on the support side in particular, if you have a technical team with a very technical product, maybe on a multi-hour debugging session, and maybe it's in another language, out of that call,
Right.
the support specialist needs to capture everything that happened so that their manager and leadership also knows what happened. So you have this combination of everyone needs to have the information, but if you're jumping from call to call to call, how do you find time in your day to do that? We just don't, which is why we have the problem of the information is not there. So I
Right.
think that that's one of the best, I would say, starting points for AI and CS is, we hear so much of AI note taking on the pre-sale side, but it's just as important on the CS side. And I think that that's where teams get frustrated, leaders get frustrated, because there's so much expectation of AEs to put things into Salesforce. But on the CS side, and with the focus on retention and expansion these days, you need just as much documentation on the post-sale side. So I like that, like, kind of AI is
Right.
helping on that front.
Yeah, I'm going to keep on running. Amanda, let's go to this and we'll switch gears a little bit. Which I think we've tapped in this. Tell me if we've covered this. I feel like we have a little bit.
Yeah, I think we've covered that one,
Okay,
Marcus.
cool. We'll keep going then. All right. So now we're going to leadership insights. Now it's interesting, and this is from definitely a selfish point of view. What are the criteria? Like you're saying, we love it, or you're out of here. What do you use internally?
Yeah, I think the real magic, and actually just to tie back to what you've just described, being able to automate all of that work should really improve your efficiency of someone humanly doing that job. So the best way to calculate that is to look at someone's, hourly rate and look at how much time they would have spent, and then use that as a multiplier across your broader organization. Assume they're doing it X, Y times. That drives a bottom line saving, which I've observed within our executive leadership that is mildly interesting at best. It's like, good to know, you're saving some cost, wonderful. I think really where the magic is how do you flip that to a top line revenue impact? And so it's not about the time saving, it's about, okay, well then once they've saved that time, what more can they do with it? And that requires you to kind of measure things both backwards and forwards. And it's easiest to do with a sales organization and really making sure that, okay, well, if like I said earlier, if they're spending less time doing all of these administration tasks, are they able to double their quota? Are they seeing more customers? Are they having more customer facing time? During my time at Amazon, we would actually look really intensely about sales productivity. And the direction was always that we wanted our sellers to spend 50% of their time with customers, customer facing time, 30% on kind of prep and making sure that they were preparing for customer meetings in whatever way possible, and then 20% for administration. But that's really in a world where they're working in a highly complex, multi-matrix environment where the job is hard to get done. I think really probably, Ashley, you would say so. Like you want your sellers out there more. You want 70% of their time faced with customers. And so I think that's a nice alliance. So how do you find a way where you're really impacting the top line by getting them more deals and more sales? And that's something that we're continually trying to measure on both sides. But when we look at tools in a way, just to answer your question, Jonathan, about whether we'll keep this tool or not, it particularly when AI the costs are not embedded into every single tool today. Now, I think in another 2 years, you'll buy a tool and an AI is a standard. It's not a separate add-on line item.
Right.
So that may happen in the next 12 months. It may not. I think it's so easy at renewal stage, if it's an add-on, for it to just be kicked off, because you already have a 5 to 10% increase generally on price increase year over year, which can be substantial. Your sales organization may have grown, so you've got increased number of licenses, and you've got an add-on. So when you've got a condensed budget, like everyone has in their tool stack, you're looking at this bill and thinking, okay, how can I get this PO to be a bit more in line with what I spent last year? Otherwise, I'm going to have to go to the C-suite and I'm going to have to justify why this tool is costing anywhere upwards of 15 to 20% more. And so if we cannot justify that through a bottom line saving or a top line impact, it's going to get cut. And the first thing that you're going to cut is AI if you're not seeing adoption.
Do you find that vendors you work with are talking that same language so they can help give you ammo to be able to have a conversation when those things happen, or is that happening really? Is more feature based?
I think they're getting better at it. My team come from a place where we're trying to push adoption and we know adoption, but I think a lot of companies are like had the shiny thing, they're selling AI, and now they're realizing that, you know, that point we made earlier about driving adoption is really, really intentional, and not all companies are in a position to provide the support, the proof of value. So it's an interesting dynamic in the next 12 to 18 months if we'll see this rise in AI adoption, or at least people adding it into all of their tool stack. And then suddenly we see like a bit of a dip with the churn before it gets better again.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Because of time, I'm going to keep this rolling here, but this is one I definitely want to tap into. Is this kind of the same thing of like, how do you decide what you keep and what you stay? And do you ever get rid of a AI tech that is giving good return, but it's not as high as others, as an example? Like it's okay, but not as good as it could be?
Across the board, we have somewhere between 75 and 80 tools that drives our sales tech and our MarTech.
Right.
Not all tools are created equally. However, our top 20 tools cost about 80% of our budget. And so I really direct my team to focus on those top 20 tools because they're the ones that are going to have a really high increase year over year, likely. And they're costing a lot because generally they should be having an impact to our business. And so we would make sure that we write really in-depth business cases that will go towards the justification of a new tool. And, I come from Amazon. We generally write white papers. So the teams will write out something that says, in-depth background, like what is the problem statement this tool is trying to solve for? What are the advantages that we think it's going to bring to the business, kind of short-term and long-term? What are the feature sets and where do we really see this kind of transforming our sales organization? And if we can't articulate that, it won't even get past the first layer of scrutiny. So it would have to be passed through strategic procurement, our finance team, our COO, CFO. And so it's really important that we are able to look at, again, the bottom line saving. Are we saving time? Are we able to put more customer facing time with the sellers? And how are we calculating that? It can't be a fluffy calc. It has to be something that can kind of stand up in court with our execs so that they buy it. Because this can be, a big expenditure. Tools at some of this magnitude, depending on your sales organization, can cost a lot.
I'm going to double
Are
click.
you getting more
go ahead,
more
Ashley.
scrutiny I'm just wondering because I feel like we went through, the cut of like 23 into 2024, 22, 23. I think 24 kind of like evened out a little. I almost feel like now things are picking back up where there's more budget, more spend. What are you noticing internally just from, your CFO and kind of when it comes to budget and sort of how are you getting directed to kind of be evaluating your spend this year?
We are in a good, healthy position with our spend and that we're not being asked to cut it. However, what we are being asked to do is dedupe. And that's easier said than done, because when you have so many point solutions, they're all trying to build the same capability. Conversational intelligence is a perfect example of that. It exists in almost every tool. Every tool provider has thrown it in the bag. I don't need conversational intelligence across 5 different tools that exist. So it requires us to then constantly evaluate who is starting to become a best in breed that can consume the capability of 3 tooling partners, and we can remove them and make them redundant. And this is where it's almost within the B2B SaaS space. There's a constant competitive fight where my team need to be very invested in who's got the next new feature. Is it better than the one that we're already on? And making sure we're not paying for a tool that exists over here or capability that exists over here. So we just want to try and get to a place where our tool stack is streamlined and there's not multiple options to do the same thing. And that in turn should give us some reprieve on savings, at least to invest in tools that we need and we have gaps in.
Yeah, I think that's a good reason for, sorry, Jonathan, just to have your centralized tooling team.
Yeah.
Because you're really you have a dedicated responsible group of people, but a party to evaluate, to be continually listening. Because I think that's the challenge too, is that with so much competition, we feel this, of course, being in the space, everyone is sending all these cold emails, code calls. Like there's more tools than you could potentially buy in a year. And so you really have to have that dedicated group that's evaluating.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Let's keep rocking with 2 more, and then we'll be wrapping this up. And I appreciate your time with this. Right here, this question: what's the key lesson as far as integrating team or AI into teams, whether it's you implementing it into customers or your own internal? What's one lesson you're like, this is the one thing I'd say?
You got to be focused on it and intentional. You're not going to wake up one day and AI is just going to start working for all of you. It has to be something that you say, I want it to work. I'm going to build a team around it. We're going to project manage the heck out of it. And we're going to map it to a specific set of ROIs and deliverables. And we're going to constantly report it back. You have to be on top of it if you really want it to work.
Yeah. Then lastly, I got to ask this question. You know what's coming. What do you see coming? What are you excited about? What do you think is coming in general? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, generally, if I just think about the impact you can make to a go-to-market organization, I think there's so much opportunity within AI-powered deal coaching. I think there's so much we can help bring to sellers in the moment of selling and in the moment of deal closure that can make them so much more efficient. So I'm really excited about how we bring, different tools together to kind of create almost like a minority report opportunity for sellers so that everything is really off the shelf for them and hyper-personalized. And then into hyper-personalization, I think, customer support, there's obviously ongoing a huge amount of work there where, we're seeing a lot of agentic AI, we're seeing a lot of bots really be able to solve a lot of our very baseline L1, L2 tickets. And so I think that'll continue, they'll continue to get smarter. And I can't wait for that to evolve. And then one of the biggest problems businesses face is pipeline predictability and forecasting. So how can you get more detail in terms of the buyer sentiment and the buyer journey to predict your pipeline and your forecasting capabilities to like a minutiae of accuracy. And so if you can do that, then you can predict your business, you can have a closer eye on your financials, and it would really, really help businesses, be able to scale and evolve further if they had that level of insight.
Ashley, I have to have you talk about that last point. You got to talk about that one.
Which part in particular?
Just the predictability of pipeline and understanding signals and stuff. Like, I'm just like, oh, so I'm gonna let you talk about it.
Well, it kind of is going back to one of the questions that I see here. Do you have any examples where you were blindsided by a customer turning off your AI product? And what were the signals that you missed? I think that this is, we obviously use our product for this. And so I would say that we've not really been blindsided by customers churning because we pick up the sentiment of every single call, and it's, using natural language. So we have like the exact quote of what they're saying. We get pinged in DM if it's over a certain ARR value, the founder. So it's like we're able to stay on. It doesn't mean we'll always keep them, because I think for us, our biggest indicator of churn, now that we've identified early that, hey, we got to invest in this, solution architect, solution consulting, get them really enabled, is really when we lose the champion in RevOps. Maybe they go to another job, because it goes back to the technical nature of implementing AI, and you kind of need to have somebody really driving and owning it. And we found that when the person who buys a tool like Momentum and is really invested in building it out, and then they leave, it's not so easy for someone to just come in and pick that up unless they're of the same profile as that person. And sometimes when there's a gap in RevOps, there's a gap in RevOps for a little bit of time. And then sales is like, I don't know, like this, I think it's you. And then you start to just kind of, it drops off. So I think for us, what I think some of the biggest opportunities are is that, we talk so much about signals on top of funnel with like how to do your outreach for SDRs. We're not talking about the value of signals once you're in the conversation with customers, once you're talking with them, once you're in the sales cycle. So I think a tool like Momentum, I'm sure there'll be plenty of other tools like Momentum in the future. We will all be having a pulse on our business in ways that we could not have imagined just 3 years ago. And I can't even think about the eyes and the ears we will all have as leaders in the next 2 years, to where our new reality will just be, we know everything that's happening before our teams are informing us. And I think that what that does to speed of response, whether it comes to jumping on a customer call, bringing in executive leadership to save a deal, save a customer, make a product decision that's different, I think that that's something that I'm probably most excited about when it comes to how you can bring AI really into helping not just your sales team or your CS. To me, that's very much an executive level, business level value that I think everyone will adopt in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not in 2 years, but at least probably in the next 5 years, let's say.
Yeah, pretty quickly, I think. Well, Amanda, I'm gonna let you have the last word for today. We're gonna stop it in and wrap it up. Question for you would be, when it comes to all this, as far as like who are listening, large teams, small teams, AI or not AI, like the themes I'm hearing is obviously having clarity on who's owning it, who runs it, who sees across the gamut of whatever tool is being used, and then obviously having someone who is invested in more ways than one, right? So moving forward, as you go into other teams of customers or yourself in your career, what's the thing you would say? Okay, besides what you've already told us, what's that little golden nugget you'd say to give to people to think about moving forward from today?
I think if businesses are going to truly embrace AI at large, they need to really think about creating a team like what we have at Freshworks, this go-to-market tooling team. Now, if you don't have the investment, you can easily create that with an AI council, get people to give you, 10% of their time. They have an active interest in AI, pick a couple of people across the organization that have that as, a council that can be dedicated in a way that isn't a full-time headcount. That at least starts to get the justification that this requires that level of attention and gets people working on it. If every company had something like that today and they were using a product like Momentum AI, it's going to be so much more valuable to their business. And so that's one thing that I would advocate for businesses to do. And it should be easy to mobilize, and you should be able to start to really think about the return on investment that you're seeing.
Love it. I'm gonna have one more question. Sorry, I'm gonna pick one more time. I would maybe it's more of a comment. I would love to see your ROI business case thing where you're looking at your 75 tools and saying that's cut. We like this one. We don't like this one, and other reasons why. That'd be a fascinating document.
Yeah. We built a framework that allows us to do it. I wish it was standardized for the top 20 tools, but the usage of each of the tool differs, right? Like what Momentum AI does versus any, conversational AI, or they all have different capabilities. And so you measure them differently. The common thing that is usable is that kind of adoption at its core. Are they opening the tool? Are they using it? But then within the tool, there's like I said about Freddy AI, there's like 14 different features. So you want to measure them all differently. And so having what we call a tooling scorecard is somewhat bespoke depending on your tool. But if you focus on the ones that matter and you try to track that, you'll see impact and you'll be able to drive it.
I love it. With that, we're going to wrap up, and just want to say, Amanda, thank you so much. Ashley, of course, thank you for us, the Momentum. I just want to thank you to let us do this publicly, and thank you for everyone joining in, more especially. So I'll be sending an AI-fied recap to make sure we have this all via Momentum, which would be fun. But I just want to say thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.